how do you see the technology transforming in the sense of creativity, in the sense of how do you create and share music? What advice, Shari, would you give to aspiring musicians? A surprising story from your journey as a musician, as a recording artist. Everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask the Experts podcast. We are thrilled to have Shari Tallon on the show. Shari is a versatile musician. She is an accomplished pianist, flutist, a recording artist, composer, and music educator. Shari blends her unique artistry and passion for teaching students and individuals alike. And I've seen Shari perform. She is just an incredible musician, and how she blends both pianist, playing the piano, and flute is just incredible. So today on this episode, we will dive into her creative processes, her story behind her music, and her invaluable insights for musicians at every level. Get ready for an inspiring conversation. Please welcome Shari Tallon.
Thank you so much for inviting me today, Alka.
Yeah, quite a pleasure. And I want to start by, asking everyone, we have an individual talent. We all have talents within us, and it's how we bridge the gap between having that talent and going after our dreams. I know the talent I had when growing up, I wanted to, I wanted to sing. That's what I wanted. So I want to start by asking, how did your journey begin as a recording artist, as a composer? Was that talent always built within you, or did you, seek? Just share with us and the audience, how did your journey begin?
Yes. Well, when I was very young, my grandmother had a piano. And I was very young, and I remember there's even a picture of me where I'm just touching one key and I'm looking up. And the sound of the piano as a child, I must have been maybe a year old, it just filled my whole body. It resonated everywhere. And my mom finally bought a piano, but she wouldn't give me lessons. My sister had the lessons. They had said I was too young at 7, which was completely untrue because I work with babies now and they love music.
Wow.
So I spent a year watching her study piano, and I wanted it so badly. And then I began piano lessons, and a lot of it was reading. And with music, there's composing music, which is creative, and then there's reading music, very different sides of the brain. So I was reading, and it was difficult, but I still loved it. And at about 15, I decided to start to compose. And the composing filled my body and my emotions with such joy. I would listen to the piano. I would learn very basic chords, and piano is really very simple, when you learn the language of music. And as I began to compose, it opened up a huge amount of even more passion and love for music. Then, of course, I began flute. And once you learn one instrument, you can go into another. And as I got older, I began to sing. And I loved the recording studio. I had a very basic 8-track analog recording studio when I was about 18. And then I began, as a composer, to layer textures and colors within the songs. So it is a wonderful journey with music. And there's composers that write very theoretically. I studied with quite a few of them. And they will actually write down the notes, and play. But the kind of composer I am, as you can see my piano here, I'll just sit there. And as I'm playing, I can hear where I kind of want it to go. And then I'll change things. And of course, I love voice memo because, when you're creative, it's great to just lay everything down, whether you're walking outside and having a song with lyrics or you're on the piano. And then there's the practicing. And practicing is so important. Yes, talent begins your journey, but spending time working on your craft is also the most important thing. And there's no end to what you can learn in music, which is why I also love it so much. You're just constantly growing and listening. And when you sit at an instrument like the piano, you're actually listening to it as you're playing. You know, when they say that music, it basically affects both sides of your brain. And I can see why, because you're listening and you're playing. And so there's this beautiful circle of creativity that's going on. And I'm
Wow,
very, very
that
grateful for this journey in music.
yeah, absolutely incredible. Music is therapy.
Yes, it
It's
is.
therapy. And you teach now babies.
Yes, it's incredible what music does for children. I've been working with children ever since I was 18. I started working at a nursery school and she hired me. I was playing guitar at the time. And I wrote a lot of kids' music with the children, and they just all kind of came out. You know, it's one of those things where I think you are channeling, you know, a song about a butterfly. I noticed autistic kids at that time as well, and what music did for kids with special needs. A little boy, he would leave the circle every time I spoke, but as soon as the music came, he came back. And so I talked to his parents. And music, it's an incredible therapy for everybody. And for children, it affects their development, or I should say, it nurtures their development, both cognitively, raises their IQ, physically, fine and gross motor skills or hand-eye coordination, socially and emotionally and creatively, which are my very favorites. I mean, I know kids are going to learn patterns and they begin to sing, but when I see they're actually become creative and how they work together in a group with these like babies. I bring in a lot of instruments. It takes me a good 45 minutes to load all my stuff in. I have ukuleles, egg shakers, triangles, drums, guitars, keyboards. And a lot of parents have said to me, there's no other place that they've seen where their children can experience such a variety of expression. So it's so lovely. The other thing I really love about that social emotional connection is the very first classes that I have, parents, you know, they're on their phone and I hand out these little egg shakers. And they're like, oh, for me? And I'm like, oh, yeah, mom, come on, take one. What one? Or I'll have the children pick out one. And sure enough, they put their phones away and their children, especially the babies, are on their laps. And they become part of this music class. And it's a time where parents connect with their children. They're not on their phones and they're watching their children, they're videoing their children. And just such a lovely experience to see the kids have so much fun and how they're growing just beautifully.
Absolutely. And I think you hit a point, when it comes to that creativity side of us, we have to instill that. We have to instill the creativity. And I read a book, Talent is Not Enough.
I
And
agree.
a friend of mine, told me to read that book, and it just absolutely just hit a chord, and especially what you just shared, that, when the talent is inbuilt, and it's up to us, how do we nurture the talents that we have?
Yes.
And so it is very important. I absolutely agree. And children, I'm sure they just love. So how does that? What is the process? What's the step that you take when you're teaching babies? How are you doing? Can you just share with us what the steps, the
Oh,
process?
yes. Well, the first thing in my classes is to build trust. And to make a very safe environment. Once that happens, I've got the babies coming up, and they of course they'll want to play my keyboard, so I will give them their own keyboard. And with babies and toddlers, it's all about moving to the music. The program has to be a beautiful waveform of a song, like maybe Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which by the way was written by Mozart. That melody is
Oh wow,
Mozart.
I didn't know that.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and his rendition, he goes into some beautiful classical parts. And then the wheels on the bus, you know, the kids, there's, you know, up and down. It's the simple things of getting them to participate, to clap their hands. Once that starts to happen and they begin to engage, then you've got them right there. And I also use a lot of little finger puppets. You know, I try to make my
Yeah.
programs very, very engaging. So there's the singing, moving to the music, playing the instruments, having little puppets for Old MacDonald Had a Farm, or else we'll make up a song about it. And in my classes, I started babies, toddlers, preschoolers, and I've seen the language develop, with them through the songs and the predictions, because language, expressive language comes after receptive language. So with babies, they can understand what you're saying, but they can't necessarily speak it. But as they begin to develop phonetically, and so when they're participating in that, they're being creative, they're so excited. And I've had
Yes.
parents tell me that they're looking forward to the class every week. Like,
Right.
when are Rainbow Rockers? When are we going next? Yeah, it's
Oh, I'm
pretty.
sure they do. I'm sure parents, they're very happy when, the child is with you and how take them through it. But it's like you said, absolutely disagree. It's how you create that environment, that beautiful, nurturing environment so children do feel safe and they are ready to learn
Yes.
music with you. Absolutely. So share with us, Shari, what inspired you to learn the flute and the piano, and describe how do you that you blend both
Yeah.
piano and the flute. So
Yes.
describe when you have to when it comes to leading a composition, how do you lead one instrument to another when it
Oh,
comes to that process?
yes. And well, piano and flute go together beautifully. And as you know, I also work with Chris with the Free Spirits, and I'm able to express myself a little bit more rock,
Right.
blues,
Yes.
and get into some other genres, which is really wonderful. Um, but what happens for me is it's actually a lot about my own mental health. Life is so stressful. And like for this past 2 weeks, I've had some, just as life is, I haven't had a chance to sit at the piano. And so 2 nights ago, I was like, that's it. I'm sitting at the piano. And I started to listen to some of my older pieces and start to work on them a little bit. And the next thing, after about 2 hours on piano, I'm like, oh my God, I feel so good. Like all of this stress had just
Mhm.
left my body. And I know with sound, music is sound. And there's something called cymatics. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but they create
No.
sound.
Hmm.
And what happens is the sound vibrations move water or sand into the most beautiful geometric shapes. And they were talking about heart surgeries. They'll play classical music and the healing sounds of music. So the sound of the flute also, a lot of people when they play flute, the most challenging part of flute is the tone. And I had a wonderful teacher when I was in grade 8, when I began in Montreal. Our high school band, the reason I went there is because every 3 years they toured in Europe. We went to England and Scotland. So I was like, oh, this is, I had a sort of an end goal, and I was the first flute, and I even led, conducted some of the things in this particular band. So the sound of the flute is so beautiful. And when I began recording, I would do a lot of flute harmonies. So I would take a melody on piano, and then I would create it on the flute with beautiful harmonies. And they would just intertwine together. And in a lot of my Sunday serenades that I do on Facebook, on my page, I'll take some of the piano pieces that I've basically, performed live and I've recorded, and then I'll learn it on flute, which is a completely different experience because, on piano I know it so well, but on flute, uh, it's a completely different experience. And also, I have to listen to what I'm doing on piano, not to clutter it. What do I want to say on the flute? You don't want to say too much. You want to say just enough. So a lot of times on music, it's not what you play, but it's what you don't play. So, I'm listening to the flute as it's waving, and then I'm adding little bits of melodies or improvisations. And it's really a wonderful experience. I would encourage everybody at every age to begin to play. Even, I work with a man, he's going to be 75 this year. He bought a Steinway from me when I first moved to Toronto. I worked at the Steinway Piano Gallery.
Uh-huh.
And he said, do you know any teachers? And I live in Aurora. I'm like, well, you're 20 minutes from me. I'll be your teacher. And I've noticed with him, at first he was hitting the piano very hard. And, I'm asking him to play softly, expressively. And then he can play faster because if he's doing it softer, his hands are a little bit more gentle instead of going this way.
Right.
So I see his memory improving. I see his all sorts of wonderful, wonderful benefits. But he loves it. It's something as somebody retired that I work with him 4 hours a week. And
Mhm.
you can see that it's giving him something to build upon in his retirement. And once again, mental health, emotional release is so beautiful with music.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, as we get older, you know, having the mental, the fertility, the mental state, you got to keep it. You got to keep it fertile, because otherwise, you don't want to, as we, get in age, you never want to lose that, getting dementia or what other effects, mental effects. But you
Yeah,
want to keep that fertile. You want to keep it. So if you learn a language, music, it is
yes.
therapy. Music is therapy.
It is. I worked when I was in Toronto before I moved to the country to raise my kids. I worked with a woman who was a head banker and she had a stroke. And I worked with her playing piano and it really helped her even in language and, just her coordination and it made her feel good. And then of course the research really supports, how it affects the brain in memories and how it sort of um, like when music stimulates the brain in different ways. And then this other experience that really, really stuck out at me, I was playing on a wonderful Steinway, is David Galbraith. And he was the gentleman that did all the murals for Cirque du Soleil when it
Okay.
originally came to Toronto. So he invited me to a house concert to play on his beautiful piano. And of course, he showed me all of his murals, which was super exciting. And this woman came up to me afterwards who had had a car accident, and she said she saw butterflies and waterfalls in the piano music. And she said she closed her eyes, and for the very first time, she didn't have any pain. The actual music, I guess it stimulated that part of her brain as a pain receptor or a pain, it kept the pain away for that particular concert. And she came up to me and hugged me. And so it's such an amazing thing as I'm sharing my love for music and how beautiful it makes me feel. When people come up to me and say that, it's like, wow, I just feel I'm once again so grateful for this gift.
Definitely. I mean, I was just honored to meet you and Chris. I believe was it 3 weeks ago we met?
Yes, that's right. Yes, that was so lovely.
Right,
Yes,
absolutely. And I really love the music. For me, it's music. I love music. As I said, music is therapy.
yes,
And for me, listening to music doesn't matter how stressed I feel. I mean, I don't feel stressed. I don't. I don't. But if I were to, I put on a good music, whether it's classical or whether it's music that's upbeat that really helps me to feel those emotions, to feel good, to feel happy,
yes,
because
yes,
music does that. It makes you feel. And so you know then I came up to you. I came up to you and I said I was just so blown away, because the chemistry you and Chris Burkett have is just, you guys are both just incredible musicians, incredible recording artists, incredible just, human beings. And share with us, how did you and Chris collaborate, and where did that collaboration come about?
yes. Well, you're absolutely right. I've known Chris for about 10 years. And when we work twice a week in the studio recording. And we resonate very well together because he's such a master of producer. And he's taught me so much about Pro Tools. So he's become like a teacher for me. And when we collaborate, he calls me a muse in the sense that I inspire him. I just sort of watch him work and then we collaborate and we do these different things. So the first time I met him was when he had a studio down on Jarvis Street. And I sat next to him. He was helping me with one of my piano pieces filter out just some sounds. I was this publisher in Florida wanted it for a soundtrack. And it was a live concert that I did for the Mood Disorder Society of Canada at the University of Ottawa. And it was a really nice performance, but it had somebody was taking pictures or was like, shh, kept hearing these sounds. So he filtered all that out for me. And I was sitting there in the studio, which once again, because I was into studio work myself, producing all those children's albums, and my own music before, I had come back to Toronto, I felt so comfortable. And then I told him about my flute playing, and he asked me to play penny whistle or tin whistle on one of his songs called Turning Around the Sun. So we started collaborating, and he asked me if I would come out and play places like the Cameron House, and the 120 Diner. So he gave me some of his albums, and I basically learned all the flute parts because he loves flute. He's written beautiful, beautiful flute parts. So I thought, wow, this is really exciting. I get to, play with this fabulous artist. And we are both artists. And just to sidetrack for a moment, there's such a big difference between artists and entertainers. There's cover bands and they're wonderful musicians. They've learned, like the way I learned Chris's songs. That was me learning his songs. But we both have the same sort of viewpoint of what an artist is. So the lyrics that we write, we're very much in sync with. We'll write songs lyrically that about our planet, environmental songs, about political stuff, self-reflection, spiritual songs, love songs, and things. And so we have that in common as well. And then when we collaborate, it's so very different than my music by myself or his music by himself. It has that extra edge. Our first album was called 1111, and that was, so we had The Hidden Life of Trees from that book by Peter Wolleben, and we had an instrumental. This is an example of how we wrote songs together. I had this beautiful native flute, and I just played 4 notes, da 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 da, and he was like, "Oh, I've got a great idea." Chris, as soon as he hears something he likes, phew, just a creative explosion. And so he started playing this beautiful part. And he also taught me this. He said, you can play the same notes, but change your bass line, change where the chords are going, and it sounds completely different. So then the piece was called 4 Elements. And we started out with this beautiful da 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 da. Then he went into this rock guitar. Then I went into a Jethro Tull kind of flute. And it was all the same chords, but there's 4 different parts of the arrangement. And because of my piano movements, and because Chris loves the band Yes, we would listen, for example, to Yes, some of their albums. And so much of that music, we call it progressive rock because it starts off somewhere, but then it goes into these surprises. And like he'll say to me, how did that happen? And there's a lot of magic because it's once again channeled. We're not really, saying, okay, I'm going to compose this and it's going to sound like this. It's more like as the song begins, all of a sudden you start hearing parts. And recording is a difficult thing. It's very concentrated. You can't be having glasses of wine while you're recording. It's very focused and difficult. You can when you're composing, if you want to enjoy yourself and just relax. So 1111 came out just before COVID. So from a marketing standpoint, it didn't really go very far. And then as we were doing 1111, we started writing new songs, and that became our second album called Circle of Sound. And on that one, that's where Follow Your Dreams was. And I did more songs of my own that Chris took on and produced, like a song called Compassion, which is beautiful classical fusion. It has like pizzicato strings and it's got beautiful flute. And then we did some rockers like Follow Your Dreams and Skyrocket, which was beautiful vocal arrangements. He hears all these fantastic he'll say, "Oh, I think you're going to like this," and then he'll do something like, "Wow, I love that," So this week, what we were working on was one of my piano instrumentals. It's called Meadow of Pink Roses, and he's always really loved that piece. And so we're creating a rock guitar. Well, it's a piano instrumental, but now it's got beautiful guitar solos and it has some beautiful organ. And he's a wonderful drummer. Actually, I don't know if people realize that he plays everything.
I didn't
Drum.
know that. No,
Oh,
I didn't know that he was a
well,
drummer.
this all the drumming that you hear, and a lot of people say, "Oh, well, Pro Tools has all these loops, and you can just no." What he does is he'll use the sound of the kits. But when he's here, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a congo and I've got lots of djembes and things like that. So even the way he plays tambourine, he'll do it, and he'll use his fingers to make this beautiful rhythm. So he'll do lots of live percussion. Then we'll program drum parts, but it'll be like, okay, we need splash cymbals here. So It's all written. He's also an amazing bass player. Incredible. Like
No, I did
all
not know that. Yeah.
he plays, I've got a bass here plus keyboard bass. Also keyboard. I love when he plays keyboard because he's such a percussive musician. And with piano, it's a little bit different. There's a sustain pedal, and there's keyboard players, and then there's pianists. So he'll be like, "Do you want to do the organ part?" I'm like, "No, no. Let's see what you can do first." On Follow Your Dreams, I did do the organ solo. So I do some organ and some keys. I'll do the piano parts and stuff like that. So I've learned so much from him as not only musically, and it's funny because when we're working, I know exactly what he's going to do next. Like I'm like, and okay, he's going to add some fast Leslie, and I'm like, okay, I know, and then he does it, and I'm beginning to engineer a bit more, but he's very fast, and I'm not quite as fast, so a lot of times he'll do the engineering as well. When he was very young, he used to play drums on like the desk in his classroom. They'd always tell him to stop.
Okay.
Um, you know, the thing about drums, I've always been fascinated by rhythms because when you learn piano and you play by yourself, you can slow down and speed up when you want to. But when you play with other artists or other musicians, you've got to make sure you're right in time.
Right. Yes.
So there was this one wonderful thing that he taught me about accents, and it's just basically doing very simple rhythms like 1 and 2, and on the congo 3 and 4, and just like that. But then when you put an accent on the and, it's like da 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 da. It's different than da 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 da. It's anytime you do an accent. So what that has done for me on piano, because I have been asking. I mean, I married a drummer when I was 18. All I really needed was a drum lesson. I was like, what? But I've been so fascinated by rhythm. So what I can do now on piano is if I'm improvising, this is really wonderful for any musicians out there. What you want to do is you want to start your solo on a different accent. So, for example, if your music is 4/4, you've basically got 8 different possibilities. You can come in on the 1, you can come in on the end of 1, the 2, the end of 2, and so on. And I remember I was taking some flute lessons with Bill McBurney. He's a wonderful flautist. I don't know if you know him.
No.
Oh,
No.
jazz. And I'm like, Bill, how do you get your ideas? And he's like, well, I listen to Aretha Franklin. I listen to singers, the way that they, move in and out. But it still didn't give me what I needed. And then with
Mhm.
this particular exercise, I wrote a song called Timing is Everything. Timing is everything, musically and in life. And then I love Ray Manzarek of The Doors. He does this, because I had one of those Rhodes bass keyboards. I love it. So I'm doing this do 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 do, and I'm coming in on different ba ba ba, or I'm coming on da 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 da. So as I'm soloing and I'm thinking, okay, where am I coming in next? And there's a discipline there with practice because after a while it'll come naturally. But when you first begin these exercises, you've got to have the focus to and the discipline, and use a metronome, which is really important as well, to say, okay, and then all of a sudden what it's going to sound like when you come in on the 2, or if it's on the end of 4, so each, because when you're improvising in music, and a lot of my piano pieces, there's always improvisation. So I have a particular melody, and then I have movements that are flowing. Like when I do the waterfalls, it's because I'm doing lots of arpeggios and I'm coming down on the piano. But then you want to have a part where you don't know what you're going to play. It's kind of exciting because it's writing on the spot. And every one of my pieces has that as well, because that's the excitement, especially when you're playing live. You're like, you want to make sure it's great. But there's always that element of risk involved too. So yeah, it's really, really an incredible journey. And I hope if there are musicians out there, you can do something so simple, very simple chords, and try that exercise with, even on guitar. You can do it on guitar, just put different accents. I was teaching these 2 ladies ukulele. They actually came out and saw Chris and I play. We did a concert for a woman called Diana Beersford Kroger. Now, she is an amazing, uh, well, she's from Norway. Is it
Okay.
Norway? She's Celtic, Ireland. She's from Ireland. Anyway, she knows all about trees. And so because we had the hidden life of trees, we were invited to do a song while she was doing a book signing. She's written many, many books and put lots of movies and videos out there. So we met these two ladies, and they were like, they loved the Follow Your Dreams song. They're like, could you send me the charts? We want to play it on ukulele.
Okay.
So I got together with them in March just for a Zoom lesson with the two of them. And
Mhm.
one of the first, they said, we don't know, where do we go in music? Like, we're doing this, but we don't know how to grow. So the first thing I said is, okay, I want you to strum the ukulele, but I want you to put different accents on your different rhythms. And when I met them the following week, it was amazing how they played.
Wow.
And yeah, and they sang Follow Your Dreams on ukulele. I was like, oh, this is the first time somebody's done a cover of one of my songs. And then I
Good.
asked one of them to learn like just G minor, G blues. Once again, it's kind of a map, all of these different scales or modes. And I said, do the same thing, put accents on your different, come in at different places. And so anyway, it was a lot of fun. And that's on ukulele. So
Ukulele. Wow, that was so incredible.
yeah.
But it's so good. Yeah, no, it's so amazing. Sherry, can you share a surprising story from your journey as a musician, as a recording artist, for our listeners to, for our listeners and what they would not expect? So, can you share a surprising story in your journey for our listeners, what they would not expect to know
What they
about?
would, what something different about me. Let me think about that for just a second. Well, this was a pretty interesting story. I was invited to the Bob Rumble Center for the Deaf,
Mhm.
and I was fascinated because these children all had hearing impairments. They really couldn't hear, and they came up and touched the instruments, and that was a surprise for me because I didn't know what would happen or how they would react. And lately I've been fascinated about animals. There's a gentleman who does Instagram and he plays music to animals, and
Oh,
they all come. So when I look after my daughter's pug, he sits under my piano. And so I guess, I mean, for me, it's the whole journey. When you kind of open yourself up to different experiences, you do get surprised with some of the outcomes. And on the other hand, some horrible surprises were when sometimes you go out and play in a bar and people are like, we don't want to listen to art. We just want to hear music, cover songs. And when you're an artist, it's very different than an entertainer. And you really have to find your audience. So house concerts, I love doing house concerts because you've got maybe 20 or 30 people that are all there to meet an artist, to hear their music, and also to meet you and to talk to you about things that they're going through or how maybe your music inspired them. Um, and like there's lots of I mean, the venues in Toronto have really gone down. Like when it was wonderful when I met you with Signa Miranda, and she's wonderful. She invited Chris and I out to do these TV shows when COVID was on, and she told us about the Toronto Musicians Association. Both
okay.
Chris and I never joined. Now we've joined and we're getting more scale. Like the obviously some better pay because you're in the union, and so it was really interesting during COVID what had happened. When I was playing my concerts, this was another surprise. I was really doing it for me, and I was watching a lot of musicians on Facebook very depressed. They couldn't go out and play anymore. They were so lost. And so I started like on my phone. It was the funniest thing. My very first one, it was just like live off my phone. And then I got Ecamm and I got more professional. So what happened was people were saying, thank you. Like, thank you for, I was a Sunday serenade. So I would do piano pieces, beautiful flute. And then I also did covers. Like I would do the Rolling Stones or the Doors. I'd rock up a bit, rock it out. And it was a half an hour, 45 minutes every Sunday at 8 o'clock.
Mhm.
And I couldn't believe the amount of people that said, thank you for coming into my home and making my Sunday so special. I didn't realize the effect it would be because I really did it just because what else was I going to do? It's COVID. I had to do something. And later on, especially musicians that were in bands, that was really difficult because they couldn't get together with their bandmates. But I was really surprised about the amount of depression that musicians had during that time. And, once again, just getting online and sharing something, whether it's a workshop or your own music or sharing music that you love or what you're doing today with your wonderful podcasts, I think really inspires people and changes them, which is something extra wonderful.
Exactly, exactly. As long as we can uplift, you can uplift your soul in any
Yes.
way, it's just more beautiful. What advice, Sherry, would you give to aspiring musicians?
I would say, practice. Take something that you want to do. First, find the music that you love to play, and grow as a composer. It's not hard to compose. You just have to learn the rudiments, and challenge yourself. So, for example, like one of the things that Chris taught me about, like on piano, change your left hand. So instead of always going to the same two chords, if you have a particular melody, you can change the chords. It makes it so much more interesting. Like, why do the same chords over and over? And with AI, all they do is regurgitate these chords that everybody has used. There was a band that did these 100 songs. I'm trying to think of their name. It was a comedy, but they said there's four chords: C, A minor, F, and G, and there's 100 songs with those chords. It's a typical melody that everybody uses, or a typical chord progression. So I would say really challenge yourself. If you're singing, if you're a songwriter and you're singing a particular melody, find out what other chords may work with it. It will completely change the sound of your song. Use a metronome. A lot of people do not use metronomes, and their timing is just, it's not good enough. What happens when you use a metronome? It teaches you where you're speeding up, where you're slowing down. So you have different passages. So if you use, or you could use a beatbox or drums, drum loops, and things like that if you don't have a metronome. And keep listening. Like find music you love that inspires you, but then take it and make it your own. We were talking about creativity, and I remember those days. I don't know if when you go to conferences and you'd sit there for like 45 minutes and be like fidgety, and then they began doing more interactive workshops where people actually got up and did stuff. So when you're part of something, you're listening, but then you're part of it. It's a completely different part of your brain. So I would just say, don't give up, keep at it. And, growth is slow. Like people a lot of times want to like be fantastic all at once. And also, it also depends on what their goals are. Like if you want to be famous, you know, music may not be get you there because, the music business is so different with Spotify and streaming and, even these awards. Like I heard some of the, nominations for the Grammys, and they were nothing like when Stevie Wonder, was out there, or musicians like Michael Jackson, that the
Right.
music was so mind blowing. And now it's very much dull. It's a lot duller. They don't have the surprises. They don't have the lyrics. It's just, not as exciting. So I would say really stretch yourself. And if you're a songwriter, think of phonetics. Like when you're writing lyrics, the first idea is to brainstorm, write it all down. But then when you get into the editing mode, you don't want to start editing. And I know Chris has talked about this as well when we do workshops.
Mhm.
You know, when you have your ideas, get it all out. Don't start thinking, oh, maybe that wasn't so good, or I should change this. And after that, go back and say, this word doesn't sound good here. Maybe it's too got S in it, like a change. So, you can look up a synonym, or you can think about other words. And just allow the process to develop slowly within you. And before you know it, you're going to grow as a musician and as a songwriter, composer, or anything that you desire.
Absolutely, let your talent just evolve naturally. Let's talk about technology, AI,
Yes.
artificial intelligence. How do you see the technology? I mean, do you see AI evolving or integrating in music in any way? So, technology, how do you see the technology transforming in the sense of creativity, in the sense of how do you create and share music, or how do people create or share music today as opposed to when you started?
Yes, that's a great question. Well, musicians have always needed to use technology, whether it's a great recording studio, and then when the drum loops came out, a lot of drummers were like, well, now where's our job? So there is always that loss with technology. With AI, what I really believe is that when people, for example, my son-in-law, he writes songs on AI. Now, he loves music. When he was younger, he played the drums. What I look at people like that is it's kind of like a video game. They can type in lyrics, they can choose a genre. Remember that Guitar Hero came out? It was a video game, but you were on a guitar. It was the same
Yeah.
idea. Like
Uh-huh.
they weren't guitar players, but all of a sudden now they're having that experience.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think AI is wonderful for non-musicians because all of a sudden now, like he wrote a beautiful love song for his wife, my daughter. So,
Oh,
it made her really happy. And so I think that is wonderful. I think Spotify, the problem with it is that they should have an AI stream and they should have a musician stream.
uh-huh.
They got it all combined together. So you don't know what's AI and what's not. And what it does for musicians, unfortunately, people now can produce their own music. So it's difficult for a record producer to have the same amount of clients. So there's always a loss and a gain. For myself, I really enjoy using AI for videos. So Chris and I did this. We have a political song called Jurassic World,
Right.
and it's
Uh-huh.
about the world gone reptilian, like these leaders that are making these decisions that affect the whole world. And as artists, once again, it's really hard for us. We can't talk about it because people get upset if you put a post somewhere for or against. Like, no, what about, they're going to start getting
Right.
upset.
True. Yeah.
But when you do a piece of music, like we did one called Make a New Law, because Doug Ford is always making new laws against the environment. And, so with Jurassic World, we used an AI video program. Well, we could never get dinosaurs now. But for our music, we don't use it. I don't use AI for music. Music has to come straight from my heart, straight. I'm recording real stuff, um,
Hmm.
and a real, whatever instrumentation we want to do. And of course, love getting guest violinists, but sometimes if you can't get a guest violinist, you have to create your own part with those wonderful tools of technology. And the samples they have now, like in Pro Tools, I mean, the sounds. I remember when I was recording in my studio in the country, it was an
Yeah.
Akai sampler. A
Hmm.
friend of mine, she's a beautiful flautist. She actually did a flute sample.
Oh, wow.
So that technology, and it was those little discs that would fit in your keyboard. So I had real strings. So I could take all that wonderful technology of beautiful sounds way back then, it was probably about 20 years ago, and create my own music with it. So I think technology is wonderful for artists to use. And it's just a very different thing when someone's, just using just complete AI to create a song. It's just little bits of everybody else's song. That's why it's like to me a video game or an audio game. It's not the same experience as a real musician playing. And I don't think it's a real experience of the listener. Because I was in a grocery store and I'm sure it was AI, and I was like, I got to get out of here. It sounds horrible. It's like, I was looking up some notes about even when you listen to beautiful music, it actually can help your digestion or hurt it. So if you're eating and you're listening
Uh-huh.
to like crazy punk rock, you might eat faster. If you're listening to something slower, you might eat slower. So the effect of music and the sounds that we can create, once again, have a big influence on our lives.
That is absolutely agree. Yeah, when you talk about, I mean, Taylor Swift, I heard about a documentary when she was touring the Eras tour, and when she, how she performs. So if it's a faster song, she's jogging fast. If
Yeah,
it's a slow beat, she's walking on the treadmill. So it really was just amazing just to, watch that documentary about her training, the journey that she's gone when she's performing on stage.
yeah.
So I agree, it can really help you
Yes, yes,
eat,
absolutely.
eat
And
faster or slow.
yeah,
Yes.
with children, I do a song where I get them to like they hop like bunnies, but then I'll do it faster. And they get so excited. And sometimes they'll say, faster. And I'm like, oh, not yet, So we do it slow, or I'll also do soft and loud, because especially with children, they don't necessarily have an idea of volume and what their voices can be like. And so, like teaching dynamics to children, but the slow and the fast, even this new piano piece that Chris really likes, it starts off kind of slow, but then it goes da 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 da, and then it's going fast. And as I'm playing it, I'm getting faster and faster and faster, and it's very exciting. And then it might have a giant stop, a great little arpeggio, and now back into a slow movement. So what I find a lot about my piano pieces, it's like almost the life in a day. A lot of them are based on how I'm feeling. So sometimes it could be something sad, but then I'm like feeling better. So now I'm into this other movement, which is faster. And then now I'm into something else, and yeah, so it's the tempo. It does speed up your heartbeat, and it makes, and that's why when you go see a live band, it's
Hmm.
very exciting, especially, if you love the band and,
Exactly. Yeah.
the way they're playing. Yeah.
Exactly. Sherry, can you share with us a moment, whether it be on stage or in the studio, that changed your perspective of mind when it comes to music? Because I'm sure there's got to be just amazing moments that we all had or we all have that you
Yes.
experienced. So share with us what has been some of those moments that has been that wow, incredible
Yeah. Yeah.
time.
Well, the ones that I'm thinking are is when you're out there playing live
Mhm.
and you've been practicing for it. And then when you're there live, you've got just one chance to do it.
Yes.
All of a sudden, you've played something that you've never done before. And you're like, or you could even be doing recording. That happens as well sometimes when you're recording, but mostly this is the live experience because there's that risk once again. You work really hard to prepare, but then once you're out there, you're out there. And I remember like after it, and luckily I do record a lot, I'm like, what was that? How did that happen? And then I listened back, I'm like, wow, that was really, that wasn't even me. It was so amazing. So I think, once again, the more you practice and then you let it go and just sort of like, embrace that experience of that moment, it can shock you. And you're like, wow. Now, there were other ones where I remember I was playing with Chris once and I had the wrong charts. And that was a shocker because he's playing one song and I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with this song. It's a different key. So I just stopped, of course, but that, so it could also be like, whoa, when you're playing live, you could get these like, whoa, I feel really bad right now. There have been those moments, but love those moments where you've done something that you just never thought you could. You've just gone to someplace else really special.
Exactly. You've gone someplace else, and that's what music does for you. It just takes you on
Yes,
a totally different journey. Yeah.
yes.
And when watching you and Chris, when we, with the Rand and Richard, when they invited us, and watching you and Chris on stage, and I've got to say, first of all, that song, "The Circle of Sound," has got to be my favorite on the album.
Oh,
And
thank
you actually gave us the album. So
you.
before we left, you gave us the album, and we played the
Yes.
song in the car,
Oh,
and the Circle of Song
I hope
is
we're not
just
frozen.
took
Um,
me took me to a
well,
different place.
oh dear. Oh, you're frozen.
Yeah, it just took me to a different place.
Yes, that song, it's an interesting story, Circle of Sound, because I was visiting my daughter home, little camp studio here, and I actually, the song completely came out, lyrics and all the music and everything, because I was
Mhm.
in a circle of sound in my own home and loved that so much. And then, yeah, we produced it and did some really fun production with it. Follow Your Dreams was 3:30 in school board, 3:30 to 8:30 teaching privately. I was exhausted. And I'm in the car. This was before phones, and I'm singing "Follow Your Dreams." All I want to do is follow. Be true to yourself. Believe in yourself. And somehow it happened.
Wow, oh, that's so beautiful. That's got to
That's
be
what's writing. It's
amazing.
amazing what can come out of you. Thank you.
Exactly, it's so beautiful. So, Sherry, what is the process of composing music that's resonated with you emotionally across all genres?
Well, I would have to say that the songwriting with the
Hmm.
lyrics really resonate with me. The song Compassion, I was thinking about my daughter, and I was trying to have more compassion for certain things that she was going through. And here I was once again going for a walk. I write a lot of my songs. These are not the piano instrumentals, these are the actual songs with lyrics when I'm going for a walk. And or just getting an idea because I'm feeling something. And sometimes it could be even really like I'm really upset, and I'm angry, and I'll just start singing something that helps me to release that emotion. And then there's the funny songs, like I wrote a song called Beautiful Dogs because I love dogs. And I was going for a walk, and every time I'd walk by a house, the dogs would be barking, and every owner would get mad at their dog. Stop barking. So I wrote like, beautiful dogs doing their jobs, when
Oh, that's so
someone like me walks by. But the idea was, so you get these ideas. But mostly the songs for me that really mean something are those ones that I'm really emotionally connected to. For example, there was a song, a very good friend of Chris and mine named Tom Amorian. He did videos for us. He did Chris's Turning Around the Sun. He did Everyday People, which was off of our 1111 album. And he passed away very suddenly. So sad of a heart attack. And I had an intuitive friend, and she said to me, she actually could see it. Some of these intuitive, my daughter's actually also very intuitive. The one that lives here close to me, I have 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. And she said, did Tom pass away? Was he on his way to his car? And I said, yeah. She said, did he die of a heart attack? I said, yeah. She said, well, don't worry about him because I saw his mom with angel wings swoop down and hug him and take him to heaven. And I was just like, oh my God. And so I wrote a song called Skyrocket, which was just about that. When my father, it was the same when my father he died of pancreatic cancer, and I wrote a song called You're Beautiful. And those songs, when my father was unfortunately suffering from cancer, we did a lot of Skyping at the time, it was Skype. And I would play him my piano pieces, and like some were really sad. He's like, "Don't play me that one; it's a little sad." And so I wrote a song called "My Father's Waltz" that was more happy and upbeat. But when I was going through all this emotions about it, once again, the music, it was almost like music becomes your best friend. The compositions are you. They know you. You've channeled them. Then you play them, and they make you feel those feelings that you originally felt when they first came out of you.
hmm true.
Yeah.
They absolutely do. Exactly. So, how does the how do you use music to educate or to foster the creativity or the confidence in an
Uh,
individual?
well, that's a great question. With my students, I always have to assess who they are, what they're good at. Some kids have just incredible musical aptitude. Their rhythms are perfect. Some kids, for example, I had a class of 10 students, 6 to 12 years old, and some just could not read well. Some were writers. So I would always encourage every person is an individual, and I would really look at their strengths. I would always say, I do want you to read a little bit just because it's important to understand the language, but now
Mhm.
let's have some fun. You do some improvising. Here's your map. When I was at the Steinway Gallery, a lot of these wonderful pianists, they couldn't play anything unless they were reading, and they always said to me, oh, I wish I could just play. So I think that a holistic approach is, a little bit of reading, composing, understanding the piano, and really tapping into their creativity. And I'd like to share a story about another surprise story, actually. It was about a program I did. I was talking to you briefly about it at Cigna's called the Creative Players After School. And what had happened was there was a boy who was 12 and he was autistic. And he was also, um, his gender, even though he was born as a boy, he really felt female, you know. And so he auditioned for a talent show and they didn't let him in. And I went up to the principal. I said, look, what are you doing? Why? Oh, he sang the same song, Frozen, as this other girl. I said, so what? You got to give this child who's 12 an opportunity to be creative, because he struggled with a mother and father that were, it was just not a good situation. These were all kids at risk in this particular program. It was an indigenous area, but there was a lot of drugs and alcohol and a lot of abuse. So it was a very difficult area. So I started this program thinking music and theater. Yeah. And I started the first class with sound effects. So, you know, one student would do something and the other kids would make sound effects while they were walking. Do, 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 like that. So I would bring these props, costumes, and I would bring just lots of fun things, lots of instruments. And I'd say, okay, who do you want to be and where do you want to be? These kids created these skits, and so much of what they were going through at home came out in these skits. And they were funny, they were intense. And what happened was, because it was all made up, it was kind of like, you know, when you're kids and you're playing cops and robbers or those kinds of things, they would respond to each other. And like this one boy's like, fairy dust on you, you know, and the queen's like, your fairy dust doesn't work on me, peasant. So he had to like think about what the next thing was. He goes, oh my gosh, well, I've got to go back to my, you know, and he starts moving backwards and all the kids are doing sound effects. And he goes, oh no, I'm stuck in a window. Like these things would come out that were so creative. So I did the program twice. It was after school, and it was sponsored by a business. And, you know, basically I would buy like gluten-free Cheerios and pickles and, you know, give the kids lots of food. And, you know, there wasn't a lot of money in it, but there was so much satisfaction and joy. Like I didn't do it for the money. I did it for these kids.
Right.
And then what happened was, all of a sudden the parents said to me, it's the first time they want to go to school.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
Also in the playground, when they were bullied and or talked to in a way that made them upset, they were able to pretend that they were in that classroom again, be doing a skit, and the way they responded was completely different. Instead of, you know, reacting the way they used to react, maybe aggressively, they'd be like, well, your fairy dust doesn't work for me, and walk away. So they began to actually like grow. And when I moved away, their parents were so sad, because I had just before I moved back to Toronto, I was doing these programs. The program could be run by anybody. It's just could be a volunteers. It's like I had me and two parent volunteers, and all we did was facilitated that everybody was respectful. And so many times the bully in the class, he was the victim, and the victim was the bully. And so they created this themselves. So they began to have empathy. They began to have teamwork and cooperation.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, it goes back to, again, musicians. When you're playing with other musicians that you enjoy and they're as good as you, there's a nonverbal communication that happens in music. You're part of this incredible experience with more than just one person. And you're vibrating and resonating from what they've played. And you're hearing it. And then all of a sudden, like a great drummer will all of a sudden play bum, bum. And then all of a sudden the guitar player will do the same kind of thing, but take it somewhere else. And I absolutely love nonverbal communication, probably because as a child, I wasn't really taught to express emotions. I was that person that avoided emotions. I didn't have the vocabulary to even label the emotion or define the emotion. So what I did is I'd play piano. I would run away. I would process slowly. And, now as an adult, of course, I'm learning about defining emotions and talking about it. But sometimes I have to go to the piano first if it's an overwhelming experience, play, relax, then I can process what it is I really want to say to someone. So creativity, it's one of the most important things, I think, for everybody. And school doesn't really encourage creativity. It's a lot of academic stuff. So I think any of the arts are so important to allow a person to express themselves and be who they are and who they want to be.
I couldn't agree more. Children have to, we have to bring in that creativity, in schools, apart from the academic, I think music. And I was having this conversation, actually, we all sit on the same table, at that restaurant. So I was talking to Laura Fernandez, and we were talking about the same, how, she's encouraged her children, they were playing music. And I said, well, I totally understand, in schools, we have to make that an option. It has to be a priority that teachers have to, apart from the academics, music has to, they have to be taught because the creativity has to come out. So I couldn't agree more.
Yes. Oh, and I love Laura. Her
She's amazing.
voice
Yeah.
and the songs that her and her husband played were absolutely so beautiful. And what the school system, really sad part was years ago, what happened was they took music teachers out of elementary, and these grade one teachers, they didn't know music at all. They couldn't teach it because they didn't know it. And so, when I was working in the school system, I worked with music and autistic children, and I also supported, in different classrooms. So I would do a lot of the music teaching. But once again, the governments and the boards of education, if they don't, they're looking at these, curriculum-wide tests across Ontario. It's so ridiculous. It's about how the teachers teach. It's not about children. But when you teach a child that to explore their creativity, I mean, they become once again more confident, and their self-esteem grows. And even as an artist, I mean, when you are allowed to have that creative and people like your songs, it just gives you that emotional feeling that what you're doing is influencing other people besides yourself. Like when I heard Laura singing, I was like, oh my god, I just about had tears. It was so beautiful.
And I love the music she played, Amore, that night.
Yes. Oh, so beautiful.
That just took me to another world.
Yes, me too. Just
Beautiful.
gorgeous.
And on that note, the final question, but before I do go to your final question, I just want to share also tagging along what you just said about the creativity. I was at Lewis House. He actually talked about his brother. Obviously, when they were young, he went to jail. And in when he was, in jail, he somehow found his talent in music. Because what happened, all the people that were locked up in jail, the cellmates, they all had to learn, and they were taught music. They literally were. So that was another side curricula they had to do. Right. So I thought, wow, that is so amazing. How beautiful. So in jail is where Lewis House's brother found his talent. And now, so I think he played the trombone.
Wow.
That he played the trombone. And so literally now, so actually he had a scholarship to play music. And I think it was a different state. I can't remember where, but it's just so beautiful that he
Oh,
found his talent and now he just became a different person to
yeah.
who he was when he was in jail. How beautiful is that for anyone?
This is such a great point, and I'm so happy for him. And I wish that once again, the systems that we have in society, in jails, if they were given that opportunity to play and to rehabilitate, and I know some prisons they even say they offer dogs or cats or pets. Unfortunately, though, the system's like, well, these people are being punished for a crime, but what happens is a lot of it is because of their own mental illness, because of their childhoods. And if we would just allow this kind of rehabilitation, the jails, there would be fewer people in jail. There wouldn't be any
Yes,
reoffenders. And I mean, what do we want to do? Just say, okay, we're punishing you now, and that's it. And then they get out sometime, and then they just reoffend. So there is not enough rehabilitation. And music is an amazing way, once again, for the whole body, the brain, everything is affected by music. So why not rehabilitate? And that's such a beautiful story that it worked.
absolutely. He's a different person. So happy for
Yeah,
when
yeah.
Lewis shared that. Shari, this has been such a powerful conversation. It was so beautiful. We could talk for another hour. It's so beautiful. And your final question, with all this success, first of all, I do want to congratulate you for every success that you've had, for you're helping so many communities, impacting communities with your music as a music educator, as a recording artist. You have just had just a tremendous success, you and Chris Burkett. It's been such a pleasure to know both of you, and I've had Chris on my podcast, but to know as to what, Shari, you are doing and how you are impacting the community, I really want to congratulate you, first of all.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so, so grateful. This is the best time in my life, really. The amount of music and also working for myself and just being able to go out and do what I love to do. And it's really special. And thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me on your podcast.
Absolutely. So, share with us what's next for you with all this success, with everything that you're doing. What's next for you? What projects or collaborations are you
Yes.
working on?
Well, the whole challenge right now is getting the music out there. So right now, Chris and I are working on my piano album, and that's really wonderful that he's saying, yeah, let's do your piano pieces and let's, we've always talked about movie soundtracks and things, but a lot of unfortunate companies have gone AI with that. So right now on my website, I've got a page, and I've also created a page for Chris where we can sell our records. So the albums that I gave you, the piano album is on there, and it's a challenge to try to get all the music that I've done and that we've done together with Free Spirits out to people that want to hear it.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, and radio has really changed. It's gone very corporate. So it's all about finding an audience and people that want to hear it. So that's sort of what's going on. And then continuously to create new music, of course. And, the teaching, that's how I make my living. So I'm very fortunate that I can work 4 days a week and it's not a full day, Saturday, Sunday mornings, and Wednesday, Thursday morning. Still have time with my mom, who I've moved here from Florida. So I'm a caregiver for her right now. And, just trying to be the best person I can with my family, as well as honor my own need to keep in balance with music, because you have to make sure that you're in balance before you can be any good to anybody else. So I hope this year we get more concerts, more. I'd like to do more concerts with Chris in theaters, or just like, once again, find an audience that wants to listen. Because even on like TikTok, you'll see, oh, they've listened for 3 seconds. It's like, wow, that's people's attention span. But when you actually find an audience like at Cygnus, that there are people that want to listen to the entire song, those are people that resonate with your music. So trying to find audiences that would really love artists and those kinds of things, and just keep on having fun, growing, and enjoying life.
Absolutely. Where can people find you? How can they connect with you and your work?
Yes, well, if you go to my website, it's sharitallonmusic.com. Shari, Tallon is Tallon, music.com. You can Google me, even if it's spelled wrong. And when you go to my website, you'll see lots of the children's stuff, but you'll also see an icon for piano music. So my store is on that page, and you'll see flute music, you'll see the Free Spirits, and you'll even see all of the theaters. There was actually a school in Granada that just bought my Dinosaur Rock Theater, and they performed it. And I said, could you send me pictures? So they've
Wow.
got the kids as caveman and dinosaurs. So, just continuing to, sell. I have a lot of resources as well for teachers, for Circle Time. They're
Mhm.
on my website. So if you're a librarian or teacher and you need new ideas, new original songs. I wrote a song in a kindergarten class called the Empathy Song. And these are kindergartens. And it's amazing because I'll say, does anybody know what empathy means? And they're like, no. And so that's on there, and trying just to, continuously uplift people with positive messages. And then also you can send me an email. If you just go, there's a spot where it's contact, and I would love to hear from anybody out there that would like
And
to.
Shari, you certainly are uplifting people. And so that's just so beautiful. So thank you so much. And we will put your contact in the show notes. Thank you so much, Shari, for sharing your incredible journey, your insights of, mastery when it comes to piano and flute, and also composing and education. If you've enjoyed this powerful conversation with Shari Tallon, please subscribe to our channel, leave us a review, and share this episode with all music lovers in your network. Thank you so much for joining us today with Shari Tallon. And until next time, stay tuned for Ask the Experts podcast. Thank you, Shari. Appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much. And I will share it. I'll share the link of the podcast when